am plain. Those 3 words sealed in an envelope would either save Evelyn Harper's life or destroy what remained of it. Standing on that Montana platform in 1881, watching a stranger approach through the dust, a man who'd agreed to marry her sight unseen, she knew the brutal truth. If Jonah Reed turned away, she had nowhere left to go. No money for a return ticket, no family who wanted her back, just one suitcase and the crushing weight of being unwanted her entire life. His boots stopped 3 feet away. He lifted his eyes to hers, and everything changed. Thank you for joining me today. If you stay until the end of this story, you'll discover how 2 broken souls built something unbreakable in the wilderness. Please hit that like button now and comment with your city below. I love seeing how far these stories travel across the world. The train's whistle screamed one final time before falling silent, leaving Evelyn Harper alone on a platform that seemed to stretch into nothingness itself. Dust swirled around her worn boots, the only pair she owned, and she gripped the handle of her battered leather suitcase so tightly her knuckles went white. 26 years old, unmarried, unwanted. The late afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on Sweetwater, Montana, population 300 and declining. Around her, other passengers dispersed quickly, men in dusty work clothes heading toward the saloon, a well-dressed couple being greeted by family, a child running into her mother's arms. Within minutes, Evelyn stood completely alone except for the station master who was already closing up his office, barely sparing her a glance. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times during the 4-day journey west. In some versions, Jonah Reed would be waiting right there when she stepped off the train, hat in hand, maybe even holding flowers. In others, more realistic ones, he would arrive late, apologetic, explaining that ranch work had delayed him. She had not imagined this. Nothing. No one. Just wind and dust and the sinking realization that perhaps he had changed his mind entirely. I am plain, she had written in her letter. I have brown hair that refuses to curl, brown eyes that hold no particular sparkle, and a figure that is neither fashionably thin nor attractively curved. I am told I have a pleasant enough face, but I have never been called pretty, and I will not deceive you by claiming otherwise. I can read and write well, manage a household efficiently, and I am strong enough for hard work. I do not expect romance. I seek only honest partnership and a place to belong. She had agonized over every word, rewriting the letter 7 times before finally sending it. Her younger sister Margaret, beautiful Margaret with her golden curls and rose-petal skin, had laughed until tears ran down her perfect cheeks. Evelyn, you're presenting yourself like a horse at auction, strong enough for hard work? What man wants to marry a draft animal? But Margaret didn't understand. She had never needed to understand. Men had been proposing to Margaret since she was 16. She had her pick of Philadelphia's eligible bachelors and had chosen wisely, a banker's son with old money and new ambition. They lived in a 3-story house with servants and crystal chandeliers and everything that glittered. Evelyn had stood in their parlor 2 months ago, the invisible sister at the wedding reception, watching Margaret float through the crowd like something from a fairy tale. An elderly aunt had leaned close, wine-sweet breath in Evelyn's ear. "You'll be next, dear." But they both knew it was a lie. After the guests departed and Margaret left for her honeymoon, Evelyn's mother had finally spoken the quiet truth over breakfast. "Perhaps you should consider a position as a governess. The Wentworths are looking for someone educated, and plain girls make the best governesses. No risk of scandal. Plain. Even her own mother couldn't say the word without it cutting." That afternoon, Evelyn had found the newspaper her father discarded daily. She had turned to the back pages where she usually never looked, past the society announcements and political commentary, to the small advertisements squeezed into narrow columns. Matrimonial opportunities, the header read. She had felt ashamed even reading them. Desperate women advertising themselves like merchandise. Lonely men seeking wives from catalogs. It was scandalous, pathetic. It was her only chance. Among dozens of listings, one had stopped her cold. Widowed rancher, 34, seeks honest woman for marriage. Must be capable, practical, and unafraid of hard work. I offer a modest but stable home, respectful treatment, and faithful partnership. I have one young son. Romance is not promised, but integrity is guaranteed. Write to Jonah Reed, Sweetwater, Montana Territory. She had read it 15 times, looking for the trick, the hidden cruelty. But there was something different about this one. He didn't ask for beauty or youth. He didn't promise wealth or adventure. He offered only truth. So she had answered with truth. His response came 3 weeks later, forwarded from Philadelphia to where she was staying with Margaret. Not living, Margaret made clear it was temporary. The envelope was made of rough paper, the handwriting angular and unpracticed. Miss Harper, your honesty is appreciated. I lost my wife 2 years ago. She was very beautiful and very unhappy here. Beauty fades, and happiness built on illusion fails. I learned this the hard way. I need a partner who can face reality without breaking. Ranch life is hard. Winters are brutal. The work never ends. I cannot promise comfort or ease, but I can promise respect. I can promise that I will never lie to you or expect you to lie to yourself. I can promise that if you come here, you will be treated as an equal partner in all things. My son Thomas is 5. He needs a mother's influence, but I will not force a relationship. Children know when affection is false. If these terms are acceptable, I will send money for passage. We can marry upon your arrival if you are still willing after meeting me in person. If you change your mind when you see me or see this place, I will respect that decision and ensure you have passage back east. I'm not offering you a fairy tale. I'm offering you a choice. Jonah Reed. Evelyn had held that letter until her hands trembled. No pretty words, no false promises, just brutal honesty that somehow felt more respectful than any flowery courtship could have been. She wrote back the same day. I accept. The money for passage arrived within 2 weeks. Margaret had been horrified. Her husband had tried to talk sense into Evelyn. Her mother had actually cried, though Evelyn suspected it was more from embarrassment than grief. What would people say about a daughter who became a mail-order bride? Her father had simply looked at her across the dinner table and said, "You're sure about this?" Yes. He had nodded once. Then I hope you find what you're looking for. It was the kindest thing he had ever said to her. Now, standing in the Montana dust, Evelyn wondered if she had made a catastrophic mistake. The sun was sinking lower. The station master had locked his door and disappeared. The street beyond the platform was mostly empty except for a few horses tied outside the saloon and a wagon making its slow way down the rutted main road. What if Jonah Reed didn't come at all? What if this had all been some elaborate cruelty, take money from desperate women and leave them stranded in the wilderness? Her hand moved instinctively to the small cloth bag hanging from her belt. Inside, $12. Everything she had left in the world. Not enough for passage back to Philadelphia. Probably not enough for a week's lodging in this town. Miss Harper? The voice came from behind her, quiet and uncertain. Evelyn spun around so quickly she nearly dropped her suitcase. He stood at the far end of the platform, half hidden in the shadow of the station house. Tall, very tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and work-roughened hands that gripped his hat brim like a lifeline. His dark hair needed cutting, falling nearly to his collar. His face was weathered and tanned, lined around the eyes in a way that spoke of years squinting into sun and wind. He wore simple clothes, dark trousers, a plain shirt, a vest that had seen better days. He looked nothing like the Philadelphia gentlemen she had grown up around with their soft hands and softer lives. He looked real. Mr. Reed? Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Yes, ma'am. He stepped forward slowly, like approaching a skittish horse. I apologize for not being here when the train arrived. Fence break on the north pasture. By the time I got it secured and cleaned up, he gestured helplessly at himself. His sleeves were still rolled up, forearms marked with scratches and dirt. I should have come as I was, but I thought, I wanted to make a better first impression. He had gone home to clean up for her. This stranger who owed her nothing had delayed their meeting because he wanted to look presentable. It's all right, Evelyn said softly. I wasn't sure you would come at all. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe hurt. Why wouldn't I come? Because she was plain. Because he might have found someone prettier. Because men always changed their minds when they saw her in person. But she couldn't say any of that aloud. I don't know, she admitted instead. I just wasn't sure. They stood there in awkward silence for a long moment. neither quite knowing what to say. This was the man she had agreed to marry, this stranger whose life she knew only through 3 letters, whose face she had never seen until this moment, whose voice she had never heard. He cleared his throat. "May I?" He gestured toward her suitcase. "Oh, yes. Thank you." He crossed the distance between them in a few long strides and reached for the case. Their fingers brushed briefly as she released it, and Evelyn felt a shock of warmth through her glove. His hand dwarfed hers, calloused and strong from years of ranch work. He lifted the suitcase easily. It had taken all her strength to carry it from the train. "Is this everything?" Yes. Everything she owned in the world fit in one case. It was a humbling realization. Jonah nodded, no judgment in his expression. "The wagon's just down the street. It's about an hour's ride to the ranch. If you're tired from traveling, we could get you a room at the hotel tonight." "No." The word came out too quickly, too sharp. She softened her tone. "No, I'd rather see the place. See what I'm agreeing to." Another flicker of expression. Respect, maybe? He nodded. "Honest answer. I appreciate that." He hesitated, then added, "Miss Harper, I want you to know. Everything I wrote in my letters was true. About the partnership. About the respect. About—" He stopped, seeming to search for words. "About you having a choice. If you meet Thomas and decide this isn't right, if you see the ranch and it's not what you expected, if you look at me and realize you can't—" He broke off, jaw tight. "You can change your mind. No shame in that." Evelyn studied him carefully. He meant it. She could see it in the tension of his shoulders, the way he wouldn't quite meet her eyes. He was giving her an escape route because he genuinely believed she might need one, because he thought she might not want him. The realization struck her with unexpected force. Jonah Reed, this solid, honest man, was as uncertain as she was. Maybe more so. "I could say the same to you," she said quietly. "You've only seen my words on paper. Now you see me. If I'm not what you expected, you're exactly what I expected." His voice was firm, no hesitation. Then his eyes finally met hers fully for the first time, and something in his gaze made her breath catch. "You're more than I expected." She didn't know what to say to that. No man had ever looked at her the way Jonah Reed was looking at her now, like she was something valuable, something worth the month of waiting and the risk of rejection. "I should probably meet Thomas before we make any final decisions," she managed, trying to regain some equilibrium. "He's at the ranch with my foreman's wife, Clara. She's been helping since—" He didn't finish the sentence, "since his wife died. She's good with him, but he needs more than an hour here and there. He needs someone who'll stay." "I'll stay," Evelyn said, and was surprised by how much she meant it. "If he'll have me. If you'll have me." Jonah's grip tightened on her suitcase. "Then let's go home." Home. The word rang strange in her ears. Philadelphia had never felt like home, despite living there for 26 years. It had been a place she existed, nothing more. Could a Montana ranch she'd never seen become something different? They walked to where his wagon waited, a sturdy but weathered vehicle hitched to 2 patient horses. Jonah secured her suitcase in the back, then offered his hand to help her up to the bench seat. Even through her gloves and his work-roughened palm, she felt that same shock of warmth. He settled beside her, taking up the reins. The seat was narrow enough that their shoulders nearly touched. Evelyn found herself hyper-aware of his presence, the warmth of him, the faint smell of horses and soap and something else, something that was just him. "Fair warning," Jonah said as he guided the horses onto the main street. "The town's going to talk. Probably already are. Mail-order bride arriving for Jonah Reed. It'll be the most interesting thing to happen in Sweetwater since the Henderson barn burned down last spring." "Let them talk." Evelyn surprised herself with the firmness in her voice. "I'm past caring what people think." He glanced at her, one eyebrow raised. "Are you?" "I wouldn't be here if I wasn't." A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, the first she'd seen from him. "No, I suppose you wouldn't be." They rode in silence for a while, leaving the town behind. The landscape opened up around them, vast and empty, in a way that made Evelyn's chest tighten with something between fear and wonder. She had never seen so much space, so much sky. In Philadelphia, buildings crowded close, blocking the horizon. Here, the world seemed to stretch forever in all directions. "It's overwhelming at first," Jonah said, as if reading her thoughts. "All this emptiness. But you get used to it. Some people even come to prefer it. Did your wife?" The question slipped out before Evelyn could stop it. She tensed, ready for anger or pain, but Jonah just sighed. "No, Caroline hated it from the first day. She was a city girl from Denver. Met her when I was there buying cattle. She was—" He paused, choosing words carefully. "Beautiful. Really beautiful. And I was young and stupid enough to think that was enough." "What happened?" "She was miserable." His voice was flat, factual. "Hated the isolation, hated the work, hated the wind and the dust and the endless sky. We fought constantly. I tried to make her happy, but I couldn't give her what she wanted, parties and society and city life. And she couldn't give me what I needed, a partner who wanted to build something here." "When did she—" "2 years ago. Cholera swept through the valley, took her and 7 others. He was quiet for a moment. "I grieved. But I'd be lying if I said it was only for her death. I grieved for the marriage we never really had, for the partnership that never existed. She died still resenting me for bringing her here." The honesty of it struck Evelyn hard. No pretense of undying love, no romanticizing the dead, just truth. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "Don't be. It taught me what matters." He glanced at her again. "I don't need beautiful, Miss Harper. I tried beautiful. It didn't work. I need real. I need honest. I need someone who chooses this life instead of tolerating it." "I can be that," Evelyn said. "I want to be that." "Then we might actually have a chance." The sun was sinking toward the mountains now, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The wagon rattled along a rutted path that could barely be called a road. In the distance, Evelyn could see a cluster of buildings, a house, a barn, several smaller structures. "That's it," Jonah said quietly. "That's home." As they drew closer, Evelyn could see the details. The house was modest but solid, single story with a wide porch. The barn was larger, well-maintained. Fences marked off pastures where cattle grazed. It wasn't grand. It wasn't beautiful. It was real. A small figure burst from the house as they approached, a boy with dark hair like Jonah's, running full speed toward the wagon. Behind him came a stout woman in her 40s, calling after him to slow down. "Papa!" The boy reached them as Jonah pulled the horses to a stop. "Papa, you're back. Did she come? Did the lady come?" Jonah climbed down and scooped the boy up in one smooth motion. "She did, Thomas. This is Miss Harper." He turned so the child could see Evelyn. "Miss Harper, my son, Thomas." The boy stared at her with wide brown eyes, suddenly shy. He was small for 5, with a smudge of dirt on his cheek and a tear in his trousers. Beautiful, the way all children were beautiful. "Hello, Thomas," Evelyn said gently, remaining seated so she wouldn't tower over him. "It's very nice to meet you." He buried his face in his father's shoulder, peeking out at her with one eye. The woman had caught up now, breathing hard. "Jonah Reed, you should have sent word you were bringing her straight here. House isn't ready. I haven't—" She stopped, seeming to really see Evelyn for the first time. Her expression shifted from flustered to assessing. "Well, you must be exhausted from your journey. I'm Clara Bennett. My husband, Pete, is Jonah's foreman." Evelyn Harper. And yes, it's been a long trip. "I bet it has." Clara's eyes were sharp but not unkind. "Why don't you come inside? I've got stew on the stove and we can get you settled while these 2 men handle the horses." Jonah set Thomas down and offered his hand to help Evelyn from the wagon. This time she took it without hesitation, grateful for the support as her cramped legs adjusted to standing. "Thank you," she murmured. His hand lingered in hers a moment longer than necessary. "Welcome home, Miss Harper." Those words again. Home. Maybe, possibly, they could be true. Clara led her inside, talking constantly about the house and the ranch and people Evelyn should know in the valley. The interior was sparse but clean, a main room with a stone fireplace, a kitchen area, 2 doors that presumably led to bedrooms. Simple furniture, nothing decorative, It looked like a place where people worked too hard to worry about frills. Jonah gave you his room, Clara said, pushing open one of the doors. He'll sleep in the loft with Thomas until things are settled one way or another. The room was small but adequate. A bed with a plain quilt, a dresser, a washstand, a window overlooking the pastures. Jonah had already brought in her suitcase and set it carefully on the floor. He's a good man, Clara said quietly, watching Evelyn's face. Doesn't talk much, works himself half to death. But he's good, honest, kind to those who deserve it, firm with those who don't. You could do worse. I know. Evelyn meant it. I could do much worse. Clara nodded, satisfied. Come eat when you're ready. I imagine you're half starved. Left alone, Evelyn sat on the edge of the bed and let herself breathe. She had done it. She had actually done it, traveled across a continent to marry a stranger and start a new life in the wilderness. She thought of Philadelphia, of Margaret's perfect parlor and their mother's disappointed sighs, of being invisible at parties and pitied at church, of knowing with absolute certainty that she would spend her life as someone's burden, someone's obligation, someone's maiden aunt. Here, at least, she had a chance to be something else. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Miss Harper, supper's ready, if you'd like to join us. It was Jonah's voice, careful and courteous. I'll be right there, she called back. She stood, smoothed her travel-wrinkled dress, and looked at herself in the small mirror above the dresser. The same plain face looked back. Brown hair, brown eyes, unremarkable features. Nothing had changed. Everything had changed. When she emerged, the main room had been transformed. The table was set, simple but welcoming. Thomas sat on a wooden chair, swinging his legs and staring at her with undisguised curiosity. Clara ladled stew into bowls while Jonah poured water from a pitcher. Pete had apparently gone home for his own supper. Sit here, Miss Harper. Jonah pulled out a chair for her, the gesture awkward but genuine. She sat. He took the seat across from her, Thomas between them like a small buffer against the strangeness of it all. Clara served the food and then excused herself, sensing they needed privacy. I'll be back in the morning to help with breakfast and show you around properly, she promised Evelyn. Try to get some rest tonight. Then it was just the three of them, Jonah, Evelyn, and Thomas. The family they might become. You need to eat your carrots, Thomas, Jonah said quietly when the boy tried to push them aside. But they're mushy. They're good for you. Eat them. Thomas made a face but obeyed, shooting Evelyn a look as if to say, see what I have to put up with? She found herself smiling. I never liked carrots either when I was your age. The boy's eyes widened. Really? Really? But your father's right. They are good for you. I eat them now. Are you going to be my new mama? The question was sudden, direct, innocent. Jonah went very still. Thomas, that's not... It's all right, Evelyn interrupted gently. She looked at the child seriously, giving him the respect of honesty. I don't know yet, Thomas. Your father and I need to get to know each other first, and you and I need to get to know each other. Then we'll all decide together if this is right. Is that fair? Thomas considered this solemnly. What if I don't like you? Then I'll go back to Philadelphia, and your father will find someone you do like. What if Papa doesn't like you? Same thing. What if I like you but Papa doesn't? Evelyn glanced at Jonah, who was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Then that would be very complicated, wouldn't it? So let's hope we all like each other. Thomas nodded, satisfied with this answer. He took a big bite of carrots, chewed dramatically, and swallowed. There, I ate them. Can I go play now? 30 minutes, Jonah said. Then bed. The boy scrambled down and disappeared outside, leaving Evelyn and Jonah alone in the sudden quiet. You handled that well, Jonah said after a moment. Most women would have made promises to win him over. False promises help no one. Evelyn pushed her stew around with her spoon. He deserves the truth as much as we do. You're really not like anyone I've ever met. She looked up, startled. Is that good or bad? Good. No hesitation. Definitely good. He paused. Miss Harper? Evelyn, if I may? She nodded. Evelyn, I know this is strange. I know we're essentially strangers playing at being a family, but I want you to know... He stopped, searching for words. When I saw you on that platform, I... He trailed off, jaw working like the words were stuck. What? She prompted gently. He met her eyes directly. You look terrified. Standing there alone, holding that suitcase like it was the only solid thing in the world. And I realized you'd risked everything to come here. Your reputation, your safety, your future. You put all of that in the hands of a stranger because you were brave enough to want something different. Evelyn's throat tightened. And then I thought, Jonah continued quietly, if she's that brave, the very least I can do is be worthy of it. No one had ever called her brave before. Foolish, maybe. Desperate, certainly. But brave? I'm not brave, she whispered. I'm just out of other options. That's exactly when bravery matters most. He reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her hand. I can't promise this will work, Evelyn. I can't promise you'll be happy here, or that I'll be a good husband, or that Thomas will warm to you. But I can promise I'll try. Every day I'll try to make this partnership something real. She looked at his hand, so close to hers, work-roughened, scarred, strong. A hand that built things, that fixed things, that didn't know how to lie. Slowly she closed the distance between them, placing her palm against his. Then I'll try too, she said. His fingers curled around hers, warm and solid and real. Outside, Thomas's laughter rang through the twilight. Somewhere a horse whinnied. The wind whispered through the grass. And Evelyn Harper, who had been invisible her entire life, felt for the first time like she was exactly where she belonged. But she had learned long ago not to trust feelings. They would marry tomorrow, if she still wanted to. A simple ceremony, witnessed and legal. And then the real work would begin. The work of turning two strangers into partners, into maybe someday something more. I should check on Thomas, Jonah said reluctantly, releasing her hand. Make sure he's not trying to ride the cattle again. Again? A rueful smile. He's fearless. It's terrifying. I imagine it is. Jonah stood, hesitated. Will you be all right here tonight? I know it's all strange and new. I'll be fine. She meant it. For the first time in years, she actually meant it. He nodded and headed for the door, then paused with his hand on the frame. Evelyn? Yes? You're beautiful. The words hung in the air between them, impossible and true. Before she could respond, he was gone, leaving her alone with a half-eaten bowl of stew and a heart that didn't know whether to hope or protect itself. Beautiful. He had said it like he meant it, like he saw something in her that she had never seen in herself. Evelyn stood and carried her bowl to the kitchen, washing it carefully in the basin. Outside the window, she could see Jonah and Thomas silhouetted against the darkening sky, the father's hand on his son's shoulder, both of them looking at something in the distance. Her family. Maybe. Possibly. If she could be brave enough to believe it. She dried the bowl, set it aside, and went to her borrowed room. Tomorrow she would marry Jonah Reed. Tomorrow she would become a wife, a stepmother, a rancher's partner. Tomorrow she would step fully into this new life. But tonight, alone in the darkness, Evelyn let herself admit the truth. She was terrified. Terrified of failing. Terrified of being sent back east in shame. Terrified that beautiful was just a word Jonah used to be kind, that partnership was just a concept that would dissolve under the weight of reality. Terrified that she would finally have everything she wanted and prove too plain, too ordinary, too fundamentally lacking to keep it. She lay in Jonah's bed, her bed now, maybe, and stared at the ceiling. The house creaked and settled around her. Voices murmured from the loft where Jonah was putting Thomas to bed. The wind picked up, rattling the windows. And somewhere in that long, dark night, Evelyn Harper made herself a promise. She would not apologize for taking up space. She would not shrink herself to make others comfortable. She would not disappear inside this life the way she had disappeared inside her old one. She would be brave. Not because she felt brave, but because brave was all she had left. The wind died down, the house grew quiet, and in the darkness, Evelyn finally slept, dreaming of wide skies and solid hands and a whispered word that might, impossibly, be true. Beautiful. Morning came too quickly. Evelyn woke to unfamiliar sounds, roosters crowing, cattle lowing in the distance. the creak of floorboards as someone moved through the house. For a disoriented moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back. Montana, Jonah Reed, the wedding that would happen today if she didn't lose her nerve. She dressed quickly in her best dress, a simple gray cotton that she'd pressed carefully before packing. It wasn't bridal white. It wasn't even particularly pretty. But it was clean and respectable, and that would have to be enough. When she emerged from the bedroom, she found Clara already in the kitchen, flour dusting her hands as she worked dough on the counter. The older woman looked up with a knowing smile. "Thought you might sleep through till noon after that journey. Coffee's hot if you want some." "Thank you." Evelyn poured herself a cup, grateful for something to do with her shaking hands. "Where's Jonah?" "Out with the cattle. Man doesn't stop working just because he's getting married today." Clara's tone was dry but affectionate. "He'll be back within the hour to clean up. The preacher's coming at 10. 10 o'clock, 3 hours away. Evelyn's stomach twisted. "You're having second thoughts," Clara observed, not looking up from her dough. "Is it that obvious?" "You're white as milk and gripping that coffee cup like it might run away. I'd say that's fairly obvious." Clara began shaping the dough into loaves. "Want to talk about it?" Evelyn sat at the table, staring into the dark liquid in her cup. "I don't know him. Not really. 3 letters in one evening doesn't make a foundation for marriage." "No," Clara agreed. "It doesn't. But you know what else doesn't? 6 months of courtship where both parties are on their best behavior, hiding their worst parts and pretending to be saints. At least this way, you're both going in with your eyes open. Or completely blind. Maybe a bit of both." Clara slid the loaves into the oven and wiped her hands on her apron. "I'll tell you what I know about Jonah Reed. He's stubborn as a mule when he thinks he's right. He works himself to exhaustion because he doesn't know how to ask for help. He loved his first wife even when she made him miserable, and her death nearly broke him, not because he lost her, but because he failed her." Evelyn looked up sharply. "Failed her?" "That's how he sees it. Caroline wanted a different life, and he couldn't give it to her. Couldn't make her happy. It eats at him still." Clara met Evelyn's eyes directly. "But here's the thing, he learned from it. Most men would have just found another pretty face and made the same mistake twice. Jonah's looking for something different because he knows beauty isn't enough. That takes wisdom most men never find. What if I disappoint him anyway? What if I'm not enough either?" "Enough for what?" "He's not asking you to be perfect. He's asking you to be honest." Clara's voice softened. "That boy out there sees something in you, Evelyn. I saw it in his face last night when you talked to Thomas. He looks at you like you're something precious. Don't throw that away because you're scared." Before Evelyn could respond, the door burst open and Thomas tumbled in, dirt-streaked and grinning. "Miss Harper, Papa says after you get married, can I call you Mama, or do I have to keep saying Miss Harper forever?" Clara laughed. "Thomas Reed, you're supposed to ask the lady herself, not announce it like that." The boy looked at Evelyn with those wide, earnest eyes. "Well, can I?" Evelyn's throat tightened. "If you want to, but there's no rush. You can call me whatever feels right." "What about Evelyn? Papa calls you that." "That works too." Thomas considered this seriously. "I think I'll try Mama and see if it feels weird." "That sounds like a good plan." He nodded, satisfied, and ran back outside, leaving a trail of dirt behind him. Clara sighed and reached for the broom. "That child," she muttered affectionately. "Born in a barn and determined to bring the barn into every house he enters." The next hour passed in a blur of activity. Clara showed Evelyn around the ranch properly, the barn where the horses and milk cow lived, the chicken coop where hens scratched and clucked, the smokehouse, the root cellar, the vegetable garden that needed weeding. It was overwhelming, all the work that went into keeping this place running. Caroline hated all of this, Clara said quietly as they stood in the garden. Thought it was beneath her. Used to stand in the kitchen and cry because her hands got rough from work. She glanced at Evelyn. "You going to cry?" Evelyn looked down at her own hands, already rougher than a lady should be, never particularly soft or elegant. "No, I'm not going to cry." "Good, because this life will break you if you expect it to be easy, but it'll make you strong if you let it." They returned to the house to find Jonah on the porch, cleaned up and wearing what must have been his only good shirt. White, pressed, tucked into dark trousers. His hair was still damp from washing, combed back from his face. He looked nervous. "Clara," he said with a nod. Then his eyes found Evelyn. "Evelyn, you look... That's a nice dress." It was possibly the most awkward compliment she'd ever received, and somehow that made it more genuine. "Thank you. You look very handsome." He flushed slightly. "The preacher's coming up the road. I can see his wagon." This was it, the moment where everything became real. Clara squeezed Evelyn's shoulder. "I'll go fetch Pete and Thomas. They'll stand as witnesses. You two probably want a minute." She disappeared into the house, leaving Jonah and Evelyn alone on the porch. The morning sun was already hot, promising a scorching afternoon. In the distance, a wagon did indeed approach, dust rising behind it. "Are you sure?" Jonah asked quietly. "Because if you're not, we can send the preacher away. No shame in that." Evelyn took a deep breath. "Are you sure?" "I asked first." "I'm sure if you're sure." A small smile tugged at his mouth. "That's not exactly a ringing endorsement." "I'm terrified," she admitted. "But I'm sure. Is that contradictory?" "No, I'm terrified too." He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the faint scar above his left eyebrow, the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. "But I meant what I said last night. I'll try. Every day I'll try to be worthy of your trust. And I'll try to be a good partner, a good mother to Thomas, a good..." She faltered. "A good wife." His hand found hers, warm and steady. "Then let's do this thing." The preacher arrived moments later, Reverend Matthews, an elderly man with kind eyes and hands gnarled by arthritis. Claire and Pete appeared from the house with Thomas between them, the boy practically vibrating with excitement. "Are we ready?" the Reverend asked, looking between Jonah and Evelyn with gentle understanding. He'd clearly performed this kind of marriage before, practical unions born of necessity rather than romance. "We're ready," Jonah said firmly. They stood together in the main room of the house, sunlight streaming through the windows. There were no flowers, no music, no guests beyond the necessary witnesses, just two people making promises they hoped they could keep. "Dearly beloved," Reverend Matthews began, and Evelyn felt the surreal weight of it all crash over her. She was getting married, actually married, to this stranger who somehow didn't feel like a stranger anymore. The words washed over her: love, honor, cherish. The Reverend had adapted the traditional vows, perhaps sensing that "till death do us part" felt presumptuous for two people who barely knew each other. "Do you, Jonah Reed, take Evelyn Harper as your lawfully wedded wife, to treat with respect and honesty, to partner with in both prosperity and hardship, for as long as you both shall live?" "I do." Jonah's voice was steady, certain. "And do you, Evelyn Harper, take Jonah Reed as your lawfully wedded husband, to treat with respect and honesty, to partner with in both prosperity and hardship, for as long as you both shall live?" This was it, the final moment to change her mind, to run, to choose safety over risk. "I do," Evelyn heard herself say. "Then, by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Jonah, you may kiss your bride." Jonah's eyes widened slightly, as if he hadn't considered this part. He looked at Evelyn, silently asking permission. She gave the smallest nod. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. His lips brushed hers, gentle, brief, chaste. It lasted barely a second, but Evelyn felt it down to her toes. "Congratulations," Reverend Matthews said warmly. "May you build a strong partnership together." Thomas cheered. Clara dabbed at her eyes with her apron. Pete shook Jonah's hand solemnly. And just like that, Evelyn Harper became Evelyn Reed. The Reverend stayed for lunch. Claire had prepared a feast by ranch standards, with fresh bread and roasted chicken and vegetables from the garden. They ate at the table that Evelyn now realized was hers, in the house that was now hers, with the family that was now hers. It felt impossible and terrifying and maybe, just maybe, right. After the Reverend left, Clara and Pete made their excuses as well. "You two need time to settle in," Clara said meaningfully. "Thomas, you're coming with us for the afternoon. Give your papa and his new wife some privacy." "But I want to stay," Thomas protested. "You'll come back before supper," Clara promised, already herding him toward the door. "Now come along." Thomas looked back at Evelyn with pleading eyes. "You'll be here when I get back, right? You won't leave?" The question hit harder than it should have. This child who'd lost one mother already, terrified of losing another. "I'll be here," Evelyn promised. "I'm not going anywhere." Only then did he allow himself to be led away. The door closed behind them, and suddenly Evelyn was alone with her husband. Her husband. The word felt foreign in her mind. Jonah cleared his throat. "I should probably show you the rest of the property. The places Clara didn't get to this morning." "All right." They walked in awkward silence, Jonah pointing out fence lines and pastures, explaining the rhythms of ranch life. Evelyn tried to absorb it all, the complexity of managing livestock, the endless cycle of feeding and watering and mending and maintaining. It was overwhelming. "I don't expect you to know everything right away," Jonah said, perhaps sensing her anxiety. "It took me years to learn this place. You'll have time." "What did Caroline do when she lived here?" Jonah was quiet for a long moment. "She tried, at first. Attempted to help with the chickens, the garden, but she hated it. Hated getting dirty, hated the smell of the animals, hated how isolated we were." He stopped walking, staring out at the mountains in the distance. "Eventually, she just stopped trying. Spent most of her days inside, reading magazines from Denver, writing letters to her friends about how miserable she was. That must have been hard. For both of you." "It was my fault," Jonah said quietly. "I brought her here knowing what this life was like. I just thought love would be enough to make her accept it. I was wrong." "Love built on deception isn't really love at all," Evelyn said. "You deceived yourself, maybe. But you didn't deceive her. She knew this was a ranch when she married you. She thought she could change me, thought we'd make money and move to a city eventually. When she realized I'd never leave this place, that's when it fell apart." He turned to face Evelyn. "That's why I need you to understand. This is my life, this ranch, this valley. I will never be a city man. I will never be refined or sophisticated or wealthy. This is all I have to offer." "I don't want refinement or sophistication," Evelyn said firmly. "I had that in Philadelphia. It was suffocating. I want—" She struggled to find the words. "I want to matter. I want to build something real. I want to wake up every morning knowing I'm needed, that I have purpose." Something shifted in Jonah's expression. Relief, maybe, or hope. "You matter here. You're needed here. I need you here." The honesty of it stole her breath. No pretty words, no false flattery, just raw truth. "Then show me," she said. "Show me everything I need to learn." They spent the rest of the afternoon in practical instruction. Jonah showed her how to collect eggs without spooking the hens, how to pump water from the well, how to split kindling for the stove. His hands guided hers, patient and careful, never condescending. "You're stronger than you look," he observed when she managed to split a particularly stubborn log. "I had to be. My family never hired enough servants. Someone had to do the work." She wiped sweat from her forehead. Being plain meant being useful. Jonah's jaw tightened. "Your family sounds unkind." "They weren't cruel, just disappointed. I was supposed to make a good match, marry well, bring prestige to the family. Instead, I was just Evelyn. Forgettable." "You're not forgettable." He said it with such certainty that she almost believed him. As the sun began its descent toward the mountains, they returned to the house. Evelyn's muscles ached from unfamiliar work, but it was a good ache, the kind that came from accomplishment rather than futility. Clara brought Thomas back just before supper, the boy full of stories about helping Pete mend a fence and seeing a hawk catch a rabbit. Evelyn listened, asking questions, learning the rhythms of this child who was now, impossibly, her son. After Thomas went to bed, Evelyn and Jonah sat at the table with coffee, the house settling into evening quiet around them. "I moved my things to the loft," Jonah said, not quite meeting her eyes. "You'll keep the bedroom. I thought we should take time, get to know each other before—" He trailed off, color rising in his cheeks. Evelyn felt her own face flush. "That seems wise. I'm not trying to avoid, eventually, I hope." He stopped, clearly flustered. "I just don't want you to feel pressured." "Thank you." She meant it. The wedding night had been looming in her mind all day, a source of vague dread, Not because she was opposed to the idea in principle, but because it felt too soon, too intimate for two people who were still learning each other's names. I should tell you, Jonah continued, words coming awkwardly, I'm not eloquent. I'm not good with words or feelings, or any of the things women usually want from men. If you need poetry or romance, I don't, Evelyn interrupted. I need honesty. I need partnership. I need to know where I stand. Then you stand as my equal, Jonah said firmly. This ranch is yours now, too. The decisions are ours to make together. The work is ours to share. I won't order you around like a servant or treat you like property. We're partners. Partners, Evelyn repeated, testing the word. It felt solid, real. They talked late into the night, sharing stories of their childhoods, their fears, their hopes. Jonah spoke of his father who'd built this ranch from nothing and died too young, leaving Jonah to carry on alone. Evelyn told him about growing up in her sister's shadow, about the slow erosion of self-worth that came from being constantly overlooked. You said yesterday that you're plain, Jonah said quietly. I've been thinking about that, about why you believe it. Because it's true. I have eyes. I know what I look like. You know what you look like compared to your sister, compared to the women in Philadelphia society who had nothing to do but cultivate beauty. But that's not the only way to measure worth. Easy for you to say. You called me beautiful. I meant it. His eyes held hers. You have honest eyes, a strong face. You don't simper or flutter or put on false airs. When you smile, which isn't often, I've noticed, it's real. That's beautiful to me. Evelyn didn't know what to say to that. No one had ever looked at her the way Jonah was looking at her now, like she was something worth seeing. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. How to be a wife, a mother. I've never been either. And I don't know how to be a husband to someone who's my equal, Jonah replied. Caroline and I, it was never balanced. She needed things I couldn't give, and I needed things she wouldn't give. We were always at odds. This is different. You're different. What if I fail anyway? What if I can't adapt to this life? Then we'll figure it out together. He reached across the table, palm up, offering. That's what partners do. Evelyn placed her hand in his calluses caught against her skin, rough and warm. Partners, she agreed. The days that followed fell into a pattern. Evelyn woke early, helped Jonah with morning chores, prepared meals, tended the garden, learned the 1,000 small tasks that kept a ranch functioning. It was exhausting work, harder than anything she'd done in Philadelphia. Her hands blistered and her back ached, and she fell into bed each night too tired to think. But she wasn't invisible. She wasn't useless. She mattered. Thomas warmed to her gradually, testing boundaries and affection in the way of children. He asked her to read him stories at bedtime, to patch his torn trousers, to settle disputes between him and his imaginary friend. Small things, but they added up to trust. You're good with him, Jonah observed one evening, watching Evelyn help Thomas with his letters. He's easy to love, she replied honestly. The boy had burrowed into her heart without even trying. His mother found him difficult, too energetic, too messy, too demanding. Then his mother was a fool. Jonah smiled, a real smile, the kind that crinkled the corners of his eyes. I'm glad you're here, Evelyn. Truly glad. 3 weeks after the wedding, Clara invited them to Sunday services in town. Evelyn's stomach knotted with anxiety. She would have to face the community as Jonah Reed's mail-order bride, subject to scrutiny and gossip. We don't have to go, Jonah said, reading her tension. I don't attend regularly anyway. No, we should go. I can't hide forever. The small church was packed, families dressed in their Sunday best. Heads turned when Jonah entered with Evelyn on his arm and Thomas between them. The whispers started immediately, not even attempting to be subtle. That's her. Mail-order bride. Poor thing. She must have been desperate. Evelyn kept her spine straight and her eyes forward. She had expected this, had prepared for it. But expectations didn't make it hurt less. They found a pew near the back. The service began, the Reverend speaking about patience and faith. Evelyn tried to focus on the sermon, but she could feel eyes on her, assessing, judging. After the service, as families mingled outside, A woman approached. Middle-aged, expensive dress, calculating eyes. "Mrs. Reed, isn't it? I'm Elizabeth Hartwell. My husband owns the general store." "How do you do?" Evelyn said politely. "Well, we're all simply fascinated by your arrival." Mrs. Hartwell's smile didn't reach her eyes. "It must take a certain kind of desperation to answer an advertisement for marriage. How brave of you." The words were sweet poison, designed to wound while maintaining plausible deniability. Evelyn felt Jonah tense beside her, but she put a hand on his arm, silently asking him to let her handle this. "Not desperate," she said calmly, meeting Mrs. Hartwell's eyes directly. "Brave. There's a difference. Desperation is staying in a life that's killing you slowly because you're too afraid to change. Bravery is choosing something unknown because you believe you deserve better." Mrs. Hartwell's smile faltered. "I chose this life," Evelyn continued. "I chose Jonah. I chose Thomas. I chose this community, such as it is, and I'm not ashamed of any of those choices." A small crowd had gathered, listening. Evelyn became aware of other women watching, some with hostility, but others with something that might have been respect. "How forthright," Mrs. Hartwell managed. "I suppose frontier life requires a certain coarseness." "It requires honesty," Evelyn corrected, "which I realize may seem foreign to those who prefer polite lies." Someone laughed, a genuine laugh. A younger woman stepped forward, amusement dancing in her eyes. "I like her, Jonah. You did well." "Thank you, Sarah," Jonah said, relief evident in his voice. Sarah Tucker introduced herself properly, a rancher's wife with dirt under her nails and opinions she didn't hide. "Don't mind Elizabeth. She's been ruling the church social scene for years and hates when anyone doesn't bow down. You stood your ground. That matters here." Other women approached after that, some friendly, some merely curious. Evelyn answered their questions honestly, refusing to apologize for her choices. Some would never accept her, that was clear, but others seemed willing to give her a chance. As they walked back to the wagon, Thomas skipped ahead while Jonah stayed close to Evelyn's side. "You handled that well," he said quietly. "I'm tired of shrinking myself to make others comfortable." "Good. Don't start now." He helped her into the wagon, his hand lingering at her waist. "You belong here, Evelyn. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." That night, after Thomas was asleep and they were sharing their usual evening coffee, Jonah spoke carefully. "I've been thinking about the sleeping arrangements." Evelyn's pulse quickened. "Oh? I'm not suggesting—" He stopped, frustrated with himself. "I just mean, we've been married almost a month. People will start to wonder if the marriage is real." "It is real. We signed the papers. You know what I mean." He wouldn't meet her eyes. "A marriage in name only versus a real marriage," Evelyn finished quietly. "I don't want to pressure you, but I also don't want you to think I don't want—" He broke off again, color rising in his face. "This is coming out all wrong." Evelyn took pity on him. "Are you trying to ask if I'm ready for us to share a bed?" "Yes, that. What you just said." She considered carefully. The thought still intimidated her. She had no experience, no idea what to expect beyond vague warnings from married friends about duty and discomfort. But Jonah had been patient and kind and respectful. He'd given her space to adjust, time to feel secure. And somewhere in the past month, something had shifted. When he smiled at her across the breakfast table, her heart lifted. When their hands touched in passing, warmth spread through her chest. When she watched him with Thomas, patient and loving, something tender bloomed inside her. Not love, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. "I think," she said slowly, "I might be ready, or ready to try, at least." His eyes met hers, dark and intense. "You're sure?" "No, but I trust you. That's enough." He stood, crossing to where she sat, and knelt beside her chair so they were eye level. "I'll be gentle. I'll go slow. If you want to stop at any point, I know." She touched his face, feeling the scratch of evening stubble against her palm. "I know you'll take care of me." He turned his head, pressing a kiss to her palm. The gesture was so tender, so unexpected, that Evelyn felt tears prick her eyes. "Come to bed, wife," Jonah said softly. She took his hand and followed him to the bedroom that had been hers alone for a month. Her heart pounded, fear and anticipation mixing in equal measure. Jonah lit a single candle, then turned to face her. In the soft light, he looked younger, vulnerable. "I'm probably not very good at this," he admitted. "Caroline always said—" He stopped himself. "That doesn't matter. This is different. You're different." "We'll figure it out together," Evelyn said, echoing his words from weeks ago. "Partners, remember?" He smiled, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. Partners. What followed was awkward and sweet, and nothing like the dire warnings Evelyn had received. Jonah was careful with her, patient, stopping frequently to make sure she was all right. There was discomfort, yes, but also unexpected tenderness. His hands trembled as they learned her body. His voice was soft in her ear, murmuring reassurances and questions, always checking, always caring. And when it was over and they lay together in the darkness, Evelyn discovered something unexpected. She felt safe, cherished. For the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged exactly where she was. "Are you all right?" Jonah asked, his arm around her waist, her back against his chest. "Yes." She was surprised to find it was true. "Are you?" "More than all right." He pressed a kiss to her shoulder. "Thank you." "For what?" "For trusting me, for giving us, a real chance." Evelyn turned in his arms so she could see his face in the candlelight. "Thank you for seeing me, for calling me beautiful when I'd never felt beautiful in my life." "You are beautiful," he insisted. "I wish you could see what I see." "Maybe someday I will." They fell asleep tangled together, and when Evelyn woke in the morning to find Jonah already gone, back to the endless work of the ranch, she didn't feel abandoned. She felt chosen. The partnership they'd promised each other was becoming something more, something deeper, something that might, eventually, be called love. But for now, respect and trust and honest effort were enough. More than enough. They were building something real. Summer deepened into August, bringing heat that shimmered off the mountains and turned the valley grass golden. Evelyn learned to read the sky for signs of weather, to judge a cow's health by its stance, to preserve vegetables in the root cellar before they spoiled. Her hands grew more calloused, her skin more freckled, her body stronger from constant work. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the ranch began to feel less like Jonah's place and more like theirs. She was hanging laundry one morning when she heard hoofbeats approaching fast. Jonah appeared over the ridge, riding harder than necessary, his face grim. He swung down from his horse before it fully stopped. "Fire at the Morrison place," he said, already moving toward the barn. "Their hay barn. Pete just rode over to tell me. Half the valley's heading there now to help." Evelyn's stomach dropped. She'd met the Morrisons at church, a young couple with 3 small children, barely scraping by. How bad? Bad enough. They'll lose the whole structure and everything in it. Jonah was hauling out shovels, buckets, anything that might help fight a fire. "I need to go. Can you—" "I'm coming with you," Evelyn said firmly. "Evelyn, it's dangerous. I'm coming." She was already untying her apron. "Thomas can stay with Clara. We're wasting time arguing." Something flickered in Jonah's eyes. Pride, maybe, or gratitude. He nodded once. "Get Thomas ready. 5 minutes." They rode hard. Thomas deposited safely at the Bennett place, Clara understanding immediately. The Morrison ranch came into view, and Evelyn's breath caught. Black smoke billowed into the sky, flames visible even from a distance. People were already there, forming bucket brigades from the well, beating at grass fires with wet blankets, trying to save what they could. "Stay back from the main structure," Jonah ordered as they dismounted. "It's too far gone. Focus on keeping it from spreading." He disappeared into the chaos. Evelyn joined a line of women passing buckets, her arms burning within minutes from the repetitive motion. The heat was unbearable, the smoke choking. Around her, people shouted instructions, coughed, kept working. She caught glimpses of Jonah, his shirt soaked with sweat and water, his face blackened with soot, working alongside Pete and other men to dig fire breaks in the earth. The Morrison barn collapsed with a roar, sending up a shower of sparks. Women screamed, children cried, but no one stopped working. Hours passed in a blur of heat and smoke and exhaustion. Finally, mercifully, The fire was contained. The barn was destroyed, along with all the hay stored for winter, but the house and other structures survived. The Morrison family stood together, Mrs. Morrison weeping while her husband held her, their children clinging to their legs. "We're ruined," Mr. Morrison said to no one in particular, his voice hollow. "That was our entire winter feed. We'll have to sell the cattle, maybe the land itself. We're finished." The gathered neighbors stood in tired silence, covered in soot and ash, facing the brutal reality. In this harsh land, one disaster could destroy everything a family had built. Jonah stepped forward. His voice was quiet but carried. "How much hay did you lose?" Morrison looked up, eyes red-rimmed. "Near about 40 tons. Everything we'd put up for winter." "I can spare 20, Jonah said. "It'll be tight for us, but we'll manage." The silence deepened, stunned. 20 tons of hay represented months of work, significant value, and the difference between survival and starvation for livestock through a Montana winter. "Jonah, you can't," Morrison started. "I can." Jonah's jaw was set. "We're neighbors. That means something." "I'll put in 5 tons, Pete Bennett called out. "It'll stretch us, but we'll make it work." 3 tons from us, another rancher added. 2 from the Tucker place. One by one, the offers came. It wouldn't replace everything Morrison had lost, but it would give him a chance. That was what neighbors did. They gave each other chances. Mrs. Morrison was crying harder now, but from relief rather than despair. Evelyn felt her own throat tighten. This community that had judged her so harshly at first was showing its true nature. Rough, yes. Difficult, certainly, but fundamentally decent. As the crowd dispersed, making plans for hay delivery, Sarah Tucker appeared at Evelyn's side. "Your husband just gave away a quarter of his winter feed," she said conversationally. "Did you know he was going to do that?" "No." Evelyn watched Jonah shaking hands with Morrison, sealing the promise. "But I would have agreed if he'd asked." Sarah's eyebrows rose. "Would you? That's easy to say now." "It's the truth. We're partners. His decisions are my decisions." Evelyn met Sarah's eyes steadily. "If we have less this winter, we'll manage together." Sarah studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You really mean that? You're not just saying what sounds good." "I don't have the energy for lies," Evelyn said honestly. "I'm too tired and too dirty and too grateful our home is still standing." A laugh burst from Sarah. "I like you more every time we talk. Come on, let's get some water in you before you collapse." They sat in the shade of the Morrisons' house, passing a dipper between them, watching the men finish securing the site. Elizabeth Hartwell appeared, looking impeccable despite the chaos, her dress barely smudged. "Such a tragedy," she said to no one in particular. "Though one must wonder if proper precautions were taken. Fire doesn't just happen, after all." Sarah's jaw clenched. Evelyn put a hand on her arm, a silent request to let it go. But Mrs. Morrison heard. She turned, face streaked with tears and soot. "My husband was clearing brush when a spark from his pipe caught dry grass. It was an accident. It could happen to anyone." "Of course," Mrs. Hartwell said, her tone dripping false sympathy. "I'm merely suggesting that more careful men might avoid such accidents." Evelyn stood. She'd had enough of this woman's poison. "Are you here to help or to judge?" Mrs. Hartwell's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me?" "You've been standing there for 15 minutes, perfectly clean, making observations. If you have time to criticize, you have time to carry water or comfort children or do literally anything useful." "How dare you? How dare I what? Expect basic decency? Expect someone who claims to be a pillar of this community to actually support that community in crisis?" Evelyn was aware of others listening now, but she didn't care. "You talk about proper behavior and social grace, but grace means helping those in need, not kicking them when they're down." Mrs. Hartwell's face flushed. "You're a mail-order bride. You have no standing to lecture me about community values." "You're right. I'm new here. I don't know all the unspoken rules and social hierarchies." Evelyn took a step closer. "But I know kindness. I know sacrifice. And I know that Jonah just gave away hay he can't afford to lose because he understands what it means to be a neighbor." "What did you give, Mrs. Hartwell? Besides judgment?" The silence was absolute. Mrs. Hartwell opened her mouth, closed it, then turned on her heel and stalked away. The moment she was gone, someone started clapping, then another person. Then Sarah was grinning, and Mrs. Morrison was hugging Evelyn fiercely. "Someone needed to say that," Sarah declared. "We've all been tiptoeing around Elizabeth's nastiness for years." Jonah appeared, taking in the scene with confusion. "What did I miss?" "Your wife just put Elizabeth Hartwell in her place," Sarah informed him. "It was magnificent." He looked at Evelyn, surprise and something warmer in his expression. "Did you?" "She was being cruel to the Morrisons," Evelyn said simply. "Someone needed to stop her." Jonah's hand found hers, squeezing gently. "That's my girl," he said quietly, and the pride in his voice made Evelyn's chest tighten with unexpected emotion. They rode home as the sun set, both exhausted and reeking of smoke. Thomas ran to meet them at the Bennett place, full of questions about the fire. Evelyn held him close, grateful beyond words that their home was safe, that their family was intact. That night, after Thomas was asleep, Jonah drew a bath in the big tub they kept in the kitchen. He filled it with water heated on the stove, his movements methodical despite his obvious exhaustion. "You first," he said to Evelyn. "I'll wait outside." She was too tired to argue about modesty. She stripped down and sank into the hot water with a groan of relief, scrubbing away layers of soot and sweat. When she emerged, clean and wrapped in her dressing gown, Jonah took his turn while she made tea with shaking hands. 20 tons of hay," she said, when he joined her at the table, both of them in night clothes, too weary to care about propriety. "That's going to hurt us this winter." "I know." He wrapped his hands around his teacup. "I should have discussed it with you first. You were right, we're partners. I made a decision that affects us both without consulting you. Would you have made a different choice if I'd said no?" He met her eyes steadily. "Honestly, I don't know. The Morrisons needed help. But you're my wife. Your opinion matters." Evelyn considered this. "I would have said yes, it was the right thing to do, but I appreciate you acknowledging that you should have asked." "So we're agreed? We can manage on less?" "We'll have to." She took his hand across the table. "But we'll do it together. That's what matters." His fingers tightened around hers. "How did I get so lucky?" "Lucky?" She laughed, the sound rough from smoke inhalation. "I'm a plain woman with no dowry who answered an advertisement. That's not luck." "Yes, it is." His voice was fierce. "You're brave and strong and honest. You stood up to Elizabeth Hartwell. You didn't hesitate to help fight that fire. You agreed to sacrifice our comfort to help neighbors. If that's not luck, I don't know what is." Evelyn felt tears prick her eyes, from exhaustion, from emotion, from the overwhelming realization that this man actually valued her. "I'm not special, Jonah. You are to me." They went to bed holding each other, too tired for anything but the comfort of another body close by. Evelyn fell asleep feeling safe, valued, needed. The fear that had haunted her for years, the fear of being unwanted, was fading, replaced by something she was almost afraid to name. September arrived with cooler temperatures and the first hints of autumn color in the aspens. The hay they'd given the Morrisons was delivered, leaving their own stores visibly depleted. Jonah spent long days cutting additional grass wherever he could find it, racing against the coming winter. "We need to talk about something," he said one evening over supper. Evelyn's stomach clenched. Those words never preceded good news. "What is it?" "I got a letter from my brother in Wyoming. He's offering to buy some of our cattle. Good price, but it means driving them south before the first snow." "How long would you be gone?" 3 weeks, maybe 4. Pete would come with me. It's good money, Evelyn. Enough to offset what we lost giving away the hay. 3 or 4 weeks. Alone with Thomas, managing the ranch by herself. The thought terrified her. "When would you leave?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. 2 weeks. I wanted to give you time to prepare, to make sure you're comfortable with the arrangement." He was watching her carefully. "If you're not ready, I can tell him no. The money would help, but we can manage without it." Evelyn thought about the woman who'd stepped off the train 2 months ago, terrified, uncertain, convinced she was inadequate. Then she thought about the woman she'd become, capable of fighting fire, standing up to bullies, running a household. "I can do it," she said. Clara will help if I need anything, and Thomas and I will manage together. Are you sure? No, but I'll do it anyway. She smiled slightly. That seems to be my approach to everything lately. He reached for her hand. You amaze me, you know that? I'm just doing what needs to be done. That's exactly what amazes me. The next 2 weeks passed in preparation. Jonah showed her how to handle the livestock alone, what to watch for in terms of weather, how to secure the buildings if a storm came. Clara promised to check in daily. Pete's wife, Margaret, offered to take Thomas if Evelyn needed help. You're going to be fine, Clara assured her the night before Jonah left. You're stronger than you think. I hope you're right. Jonah's departure was harder than Evelyn expected. She woke before dawn to find him already dressed, his saddlebags packed. Thomas was still sleeping in the loft. I'll be back as soon as I can, Jonah promised, pulling her close. If anything happens, anything at all, send word with Pete's oldest boy. He knows where we're headed. We'll be fine. She said it with more confidence than she felt. He kissed her forehead, then her lips, a longer kiss than usual, full of things unsaid. I trust you, Evelyn. With my home, my son, my life. You know that, right? Her throat tightened. I know. I love you. The words came suddenly, unexpectedly. He looked almost surprised to have said them aloud. Evelyn's breath caught. He'd never said it before. They'd been building toward it, circling around it, but neither had spoken the actual words. I love you too, she whispered, and realized she meant it. Somewhere between partnership and respect and shared work, love had crept in. He kissed her again, harder this time, then pulled away before emotion could undo them both. Take care of my family. They're my family too now. He smiled, that rare, full smile that transformed his face. Yes, they are. Then he was gone, riding south with Pete and 15 head of cattle, disappearing into the morning mist. Thomas woke to find his father gone and spent the morning subdued, worried. Evelyn kept him busy with chores, learning that work was the best cure for anxiety. They fed chickens, collected eggs, mucked stalls. The familiar rhythms were soothing. The first few days passed uneventfully. Clara checked in as promised. Evelyn managed the morning and evening chores, kept the house running, made meals that Thomas actually ate. She was tired by evening, but satisfied. She could do this. On the fourth day, the sky changed. Evelyn noticed it while hanging laundry, clouds building in the west, dark and threatening. The temperature dropped suddenly, wind picking up with an edge that spoke of winter's approach. Storm coming, Clara confirmed when she stopped by that afternoon. Big one, looks like. Probably rain, maybe early snow if the temperature drops enough. Make sure everything's secured. Animals in the barn, shutters fastened. Could last a few days. Evelyn's stomach knotted. What do I do about the cattle in the far pasture? Leave them. They know how to weather a storm better than we do. Your job is to keep yourself and Thomas safe. The storm hit that night with fury. Rain lashed the windows, wind howled around the house, and somewhere outside something crashed. Thomas crept down from the loft, frightened by the noise. Is Papa all right? He asked, crawling into bed beside Evelyn. He's far south of this storm, she assured him, hoping it was true. He's safe. We're safe. This house has stood through many storms. They huddled together, listening to the wind rage. At some point the rain turned to sleet, then to snow. By morning, the world outside was transformed, white and still. The storm temporarily paused, but not finished. Snow! Thomas pressed his face to the window. Look how much snow! There had to be 6 inches already, and it was still falling. Evelyn's heart sank. The animals needed tending, water needed hauling. Everything would be twice as hard in this weather. Get dressed warmly, she told Thomas. We have work to do. They bundled in every layer they owned and ventured outside. The cold was shocking, stealing breath. Snow still fell in thick flakes, limiting visibility. The barn door had blown partially open, one hinge torn loose. Inside, the animals were restless but safe. Evelyn fed them, working with numb fingers, Thomas helping where he could. They hauled water from the well, broke ice from buckets, spread fresh straw. By the time they returned to the house, both were shaking with cold. "Good work," Evelyn told Thomas as they stood by the fire, trying to warm up. "You were very brave." "Papa would be proud," the boy said hopefully. "Yes, he would be." The storm continued all day and into the next night. The snow kept falling, piling higher. Evelyn worried about the weight on the barn roof, about the cattle in the pastures, about Jonah and Pete traveling in this weather. She tried not to let Thomas see her fear. On the second morning, Clara appeared through the snow, bundled so thoroughly she was barely recognizable. "Just checking you're alive," she called from the porch. "Can't stay. Need to get back before it gets worse." "We're managing," Evelyn called back. "How bad is it?" "Bad. Worst early storm I've seen in years. Some ranches are already losing livestock." Clara's expression was grim. "You need anything?" "We're fine. Thank you for checking." Clara nodded and disappeared back into the white. Evelyn returned inside, trying not to think about losing livestock, about what that would mean for their already strained winter supplies. The storm finally broke on the third day, leaving behind a transformed landscape. Snow drifted waist-deep in places, sparkling under sudden sunshine. The beauty was deceptive. This much snow this early meant trouble. "Mama Evelyn?" Thomas had started calling her that recently, the name settling in naturally. "Are the cows all right?" "I don't know, sweetheart. We'll check as soon as we can get through this snow." It took 2 hours to dig a path to the barn. The animals there were fine, but the cattle in the distant pasture were another matter. Evelyn couldn't reach them through the deep drifts, couldn't even see them from the ridge. Pete's oldest son, Jack, appeared on horseback that afternoon, fighting through the snow. "Ma sent me to check on you. Everyone all right?" "Yes, but I can't reach the far pasture to check the cattle." Jack nodded. "I'll ride out. Take a look. Be back before dark." He returned an hour later, his face serious. "Lost 3 head, found them in a ravine, probably trying to escape the wind. The rest are together under the cottonwoods. They'll be all right." 3 cattle. The loss hit hard. That was money they couldn't afford to lose, beef they needed for winter. Evelyn felt the weight of responsibility crushing down. "It's not your fault," Jack said, reading her expression. "No one could have prevented it. The storm came too fast." But it felt like her fault. Jonah had trusted her with his ranch, and she'd lost livestock on her watch. That evening, alone after Thomas went to bed, Evelyn let herself cry. Not from self-pity, but from the sheer exhaustion of trying to be strong enough, capable enough, worthy of the trust placed in her. She'd been managing, barely, and then the storm had reminded her how precarious everything was. She must have fallen asleep at the table because she woke to someone shaking her shoulder. She jerked awake, disoriented, to find Jonah standing over her, covered in snow and ice, his face haggard with exhaustion. "Jonah?" She couldn't believe he was real. "What are you doing here? You're supposed to be in Wyoming. Storm caught us at the border. We turned back." He was already pulling off his frozen coat. "Roads were impassable going south. Figured they'd be bad coming north, too. Worried about you and Thomas." His eyes searched her face. "Are you all right? Is Thomas?" "We're fine. Thomas is asleep. We're both fine." The relief of seeing him was so overwhelming she started crying again. "Hey, hey." He pulled her into his arms, not caring that he was soaking wet and freezing. "What happened? Tell me." Between sobs, she explained about the storm. The days alone. The 3 lost cattle. "I'm so sorry. I tried to do everything right, but I couldn't reach them. Couldn't save them." "Evelyn, stop." He held her face in his cold hands, forcing her to look at him. "We lose livestock in storms. It happens. 3 is actually better than I feared when I saw this snow." "But you trusted me, and you didn't let me down. You kept Thomas safe. You kept the house safe. You managed everything else. 3 cattle is nothing compared to what matters." "I was so scared," she admitted. "The whole time you were gone, I was terrified I'd fail you." "You didn't fail me. You never could." He kissed her forehead. "You're the strongest person I know, Evelyn. You left everything familiar to marry a stranger. You adapted to ranch life without complaint. You fought a fire, stood up to bullies, and just survived a blizzard alone. How is any of that failure?" She wanted to believe him, needed to believe him. "I love you," he said quietly. "I meant it when I said it before I left, and I mean it now. I love you for exactly who you are, brave and honest and real. I love you too. The words came easier this time. I was terrified something happened to you in the storm. Takes more than weather to kill me. He smiled, though exhaustion lined his face. Besides, I had to get back to my family. That word again. Family. Not his family, but theirs. Come to bed, Evelyn said softly. You're frozen through. They moved quietly so as not to wake Thomas, shedding Jonah's wet clothes and huddling together under the quilts. His body was cold at first, but gradually warmed against hers. Tell me about the trip, she murmured. Before the storm. He talked quietly about the drive south, the deal he'd made with his brother, the money that would see them through winter despite the hay they'd given away. His voice was low and soothing, and Evelyn felt herself drifting. We're going to be all right, Jonah whispered as sleep pulled her under. All of us. Together. And for the first time since arriving in Montana, Evelyn truly believed it. Winter settled over the valley like a heavy blanket, snow piling deeper as November gave way to December. The early storm had been a warning, and nature followed through with relentless cold that tested everything they'd prepared. Evelyn learned to navigate the house with Thomas underfoot constantly. School was impossible when snow drifted halfway up the windows, and discovered that winter on a ranch meant being trapped with your thoughts as much as with your family. Some days were good. They'd sit by the fire together, Evelyn reading aloud while Thomas drew pictures and Jonah mended tack. Simple moments that felt like contentment. Other days were harder. The isolation pressed in, the endless white outside making the world feel small and suffocating. Thomas grew restless and quarrelsome. Jonah worked from dawn till dark trying to keep the animals alive. And Evelyn fought the creeping fear that their food stores wouldn't last, that the hay would run out, that something would break beyond their ability to fix it. On a particularly bitter morning in mid-December, Evelyn woke feeling strange. Not sick exactly, but off. Her stomach churned when she tried to eat breakfast, and the smell of coffee, which she normally loved, made her gag. You feeling all right? Jonah asked, watching her push away her plate. Just tired. I didn't sleep well. It was true. She'd been restless all night, unable to get comfortable. The nausea persisted through the day. By evening, when she couldn't keep down even plain bread, worry crept into Jonah's expression. Should I get Clara? Maybe she'd know what's wrong. It's probably nothing, just my body adjusting to winter or something I ate. But even as she said it, a thought was forming in the back of her mind. A possibility she was almost afraid to consider. It was Clara who finally put words to it 3 days later when the nausea hadn't improved. The older woman arrived to find Evelyn bent over the kitchen basin, retching. How long's this been going on? Clara asked, her tone knowing. 3 days of feeling really ill? Maybe a week of just feeling off. And your monthly courses? Evelyn froze. She'd been so busy surviving the storm, managing the ranch, adjusting to married life, that she hadn't paid attention. When had her last cycle been? September? Early October? Oh, she breathed. Clara smiled. Congratulations, dear. You're going to have a baby. The words didn't feel real. Evelyn sat heavily in a chair, mind spinning. A baby. She was going to be a mother, not just to Thomas, though that had become real and precious, but to a child of her own body. Are you sure? She managed. Pretty sure. The signs are all there. You'll need to see Doc Henderson when the road's clear to confirm it, but I'd bet money on it. Clara squeezed her shoulder. How do you feel about it? I don't know. Honest as always. Terrified mostly. That's normal. Every woman's terrified her first time. Clara began making tea, her movements practiced and soothing. Does Jonah know? Not yet. I just realized myself. Tell him soon. He'll worry if he sees you sick and doesn't know why. That evening, after Thomas went to bed, Evelyn found Jonah at the kitchen table going over the ranch accounts. He looked tired, lines deepening around his eyes. The winter was wearing on all of them. Jonah, I need to tell you something. He looked up immediately, reading the seriousness in her tone. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. At least I don't think so. She twisted her hands together. Clara thinks I'm pregnant. The account book slipped from his fingers. Pregnant? I've been sick for days, and I realized I've missed my courses. She says those are the signs. Evelyn watched his face anxiously, trying to read his reaction. I know we didn't discuss this. I know it's soon, and we're already struggling with supplies. Jonah stood abruptly, crossed to her, and pulled her into his arms so tightly she could barely breathe. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. We're having a baby, he said wonderingly. Evelyn, we're having a baby. You're happy? Relief flooded through her. Happy? He seemed unable to find words. Thomas will have a brother or sister. You'll be a mother. We'll be a real family. We're already a real family, Evelyn corrected gently. I know, but this... He placed a hand carefully on her still flat stomach. This is ours. Something we made together. She covered his hand with hers. Are you sure we can manage? Another mouth to feed, and supplies are already tight. We'll manage. We always do. He kissed her forehead. When? I don't know exactly. Summer, probably. Late June or July, if Claire's timing is right. A summer baby. That's good. Easier than winter. He was already thinking practically, planning. We'll need to set up a proper nursery. Thomas can move to a real bed in my old room, and the baby can have the cradle in our room. We'll need to order supplies from town before the spring thaw when everyone else does the same. Jonah. She stopped his racing thoughts. One thing at a time. He laughed, a sound of pure joy. I'm getting ahead of myself. Just a bit. They stood together in the quiet kitchen, his hand on her belly, both imagining the life growing there. A child who would be born into struggle, yes, but also into love, into partnership, into a family that chose each other every day. Thomas took the news with typical childhood directness. Will it be a boy or a girl? We won't know until the baby comes, Evelyn explained. I want a brother. Girls are boring. You won't think that in a few years, Jonah said with amusement. The pregnancy progressed through the harsh winter months. The nausea eventually eased, replaced by exhaustion that made every task feel monumental. Evelyn pushed through, refusing to let the baby slow her down, but Jonah watched her like a hawk. You need to rest more, he'd insist when he found her hauling water or cleaning stalls. I need to pull my weight. You're growing a human. That's pulling your weight. They compromised, Evelyn taking on lighter tasks while Jonah handled the heavier labor. It chafed sometimes. She hated feeling limited, but she recognized the care behind his concern. Christmas came quiet and simple. They couldn't make it to town for church, but they celebrated together. Jonah surprised her with a rocking chair he'd been building in secret in the barn, the wood smooth and beautiful. For the baby, he said simply. And for you. Evelyn ran her hands over the curved arms, the gentle rockers. It's perfect. How did you find time? Late nights when you were sleeping. Wanted to surprise you. He looked almost shy. I'm not good with words or gifts, but I can build things. She kissed him, tasting wood shavings and love. It's the best gift anyone's ever given me. Thomas gave her a drawing he'd made. Their family standing in front of the ranch house, with a tiny scribbled baby in Evelyn's arms. She hung it above the kitchen table where she could see it every day. January brought letters from Philadelphia, forwarded through town when a neighbor made the dangerous winter journey. Evelyn recognized her mother's handwriting and felt her stomach clench. She waited until she was alone to open it, not wanting Jonah to see if the contents hurt her. The letter was brief and cold, her mother's disapproval evident in every line. Margaret had shared news of Evelyn's marriage, and their mother was mortified. A mail-order bride to a widowed rancher in Montana? What would people say? How could Evelyn have shamed the family so thoroughly? She should come home immediately, annul this ridiculous marriage, and try to salvage what remained of her reputation. There was no inquiry about Evelyn's well-being, no curiosity about her new life, just judgment and demands. Evelyn read it twice, waiting for the familiar pain of parental disappointment to hit, but instead she felt only a distant sadness for her mother, a woman so concerned with appearances that she couldn't see her daughter's happiness. She burned the letter in the stove. Everything all right? Jonah asked that evening, noticing her unusual quiet. Letter from my mother. She wants me to come back, annul the marriage. His face went carefully blank. What did you tell her? Nothing yet. but I'll write back and tell her no. Evelyn met his eyes. This is my home now. You're my family. I'm not going back to being invisible in Philadelphia. You were never invisible, Evelyn. They just didn't know how to see you. Maybe. But you see me. Thomas sees me. That's enough. She wrote the response that night, her words measured but firm. She was happily married. She was expecting a child. She had built a life in Montana and would not be leaving it. Her mother was welcome to write again, but only if she could do so with kindness. She never received a reply. February tested them all. The hay stores dwindled alarmingly. 2 more cattle died in a late blizzard. Thomas came down with a fever that lasted 3 terrifying days before breaking. And Evelyn's body changed in ways that frightened her, swelling in her belly, strange pains, overwhelming fatigue. Is this normal? She asked Clara during one of the woman's visits. Feeling this exhausted all the time? Normal enough. You're building a whole person in there. That takes energy. Clara checked Evelyn over with practiced hands. Baby's growing well. Heartbeat is strong. You're doing fine. I don't feel fine. I feel enormous and useless. You're 5 months along. You're supposed to feel enormous. Clara's tone was matter-of-fact. And you're not useless. You're keeping this household running while growing a baby. That's 2 full-time jobs. But Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling of inadequacy. She'd prided herself on being capable, on pulling her weight. Now simple tasks left her breathless and aching. She had to sit down frequently. She couldn't help Jonah with the heavier chores. She felt like a burden. Talk to me, Jonah said one night, finding her crying quietly in their bed. Tell me what's wrong. I'm not pulling my weight anymore. You're doing everything while I sit around being pregnant. He stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Evelyn, you're carrying our child. That is pulling your weight, more than pulling your weight, but I can't help like I used to. So what? This is temporary. And even if it wasn't, I don't need you to prove your worth by working yourself to exhaustion. You're my wife. I love you. Let me take care of you while your body does this incredible thing. I'm not used to being taken care of. I'm used to being useful. You are useful. You keep Thomas happy and educated. You manage the house. You plan our meals so we stretch our supplies. You give me someone to talk to at the end of hard days. He took her face in his hands. And you're growing our baby. How is any of that not useful? She wanted to believe him, needed to believe him. I'm scared, she admitted, about the birth, about being a mother, about failing at this too. You won't fail. You couldn't. His certainty was absolute. And you won't be alone. I'll be there. Clara will be there. We'll get through it together. Promise? Promise. March brought the first hints of thaw. Icicles dripped from the roof. Patches of brown earth appeared through the snow. The cattle that had survived the winter looked gaunt but alive. They'd made it through, barely, but they'd made it. Evelyn's belly was unmistakably round now, the baby moving frequently enough that Jonah could feel the kicks. Thomas was fascinated and slightly disturbed by the whole process. It's moving inside you? He asked, watching her stomach ripple as the baby shifted. Yes. Feel. She guided his small hand to where the baby was kicking. His eyes went wide. That's weird. Very weird, Evelyn agreed with a laugh. Does it hurt? Not really. It's just strange. Thomas considered this seriously. I think I want a brother now. A sister might be too weird. By April, the roads were passable enough for Doc Henderson to make the journey out to the ranch. He examined Evelyn thoroughly, his weathered face giving nothing away. Everything looks good, he announced finally. Baby's positioned well, heartbeat strong. You're healthy despite the rough winter. Should be an uncomplicated birth, barring surprises. When? Jonah asked. Late June, early July. Hard to say exactly. Doc Henderson packed his bag. Clara's delivered plenty of babies. She'll know what to do when the time comes, but if there's any trouble, send for me immediately. Don't wait. After he left, Evelyn felt both relieved and terrified. Everything was fine now, but birth was still dangerous. Women died. Babies died. She'd heard the stories. Stop, Jonah said, reading her expression. I can see you spiraling. Don't borrow trouble. I can't help it. What if something goes wrong? What if I die and leave you alone with Thomas and a newborn? Then I'd survive. I'd grieve, and I'd struggle. But I'd survive because I'd have our children to raise. He pulled her close. But you're not going to die, Evelyn. You're too stubborn. She laughed despite her fear. Too stubborn to die? Exactly. You survived Philadelphia society, a cross-country journey, Montana winter, and Elizabeth Hartwell. You can survive childbirth. May was beautiful, the valley erupting in wildflowers and new grass. The cattle fattened on fresh grazing. Thomas spent hours outdoors, returning filthy and happy. And Evelyn grew increasingly uncomfortable as the baby ran out of room, pressing on everything, making sleep nearly impossible. How much longer, she groaned one night, unable to find any position that didn't hurt. 2 months, maybe less. Jonah rubbed her aching back. You're almost there. I'm enormous. I can barely walk. How am I supposed to get more enormous? The miracle of life, he said with barely suppressed amusement. She glared at him. This is your fault. I seem to recall you being a willing participant. I take it back. I want a divorce. He laughed and kissed her. Too late. You're stuck with me. Despite the discomfort, there were moments of joy. Feeling the baby move, imagining who they would be. Watching Thomas talk to her belly, telling the baby about the ranch and the animals. Catching Jonah looking at her with such tender wonder it made her chest ache. They were building something here. Not just a family, but a legacy. A life. June arrived hot and bright. Evelyn was miserable, swollen, and exhausted, counting the days until the baby came. Clara visited more frequently, checking on her, making sure everything was ready. Any day now, Clara pronounced after one examination. Could be today, could be 2 weeks. Babies come when they're ready. That night, Evelyn felt the first contraction. Not painful exactly, but a tightening that made her catch her breath. She said nothing, not wanting to alarm Jonah if it was false labor. But the contractions continued through the evening, growing stronger and more regular. By midnight, she couldn't hide them anymore. Jonah, she gasped as another wave of pain hit. The baby's coming. He was out of bed instantly, pulling on clothes. I'll get Clara. Pete can watch Thomas. Just breathe, Evelyn. Just breathe. He was gone before she could respond, leaving her alone with the pain and fear. This was it. Everything they'd been waiting for, working toward. The baby was coming, and there was no turning back now. Clara arrived within the hour, calm and efficient. She sent Jonah to boil water and gather supplies, then helped Evelyn through the contractions with steady hands and soothing words. You're doing fine. This is normal. The pain means your body's working. How long? Evelyn managed between pains. Could be hours, could be longer. First babies take their time. Clara wiped sweat from Evelyn's forehead. But you're strong. You'll get through this. The labor lasted through the night and into the next day. Evelyn lost track of time, lost in waves of pain that seemed endless. Jonah stayed close when Clara allowed it, holding her hand, whispering encouragement, looking terrified but trying to hide it. I can't do this, Evelyn sobbed at one point, exhausted beyond measure. I can't. You can. You are. Jonah's voice was fierce. You're the bravest person I know. You can do this. Finally, as the sun reached its peak, Clara announced it was time to push. The pain intensified beyond anything Evelyn had imagined, her body tearing itself apart to bring new life into the world. And then, suddenly, miraculously, it was over. A baby's cry filled the room, thin and outraged and perfect. It's a girl, Clara announced, placing the tiny, squirming bundle on Evelyn's chest. A beautiful, healthy girl. Evelyn looked down at her daughter, red and wrinkled and screaming, and felt something shift fundamentally in her chest. This was her child, hers and Jonah's, made from love and partnership and faith in each other. She's perfect, Jonah breathed, tears streaming down his face. Evelyn, she's perfect. The baby had dark hair like Jonah's and eyes that would probably settle into brown. She had tiny, perfect fingers that wrapped around Evelyn's thumb with surprising strength. What should we name her? Evelyn asked. They discussed names but never settled on one. Now, looking at their daughter, Jonah said quietly, Hope. Her name should be Hope. Hope Reed, Evelyn whispered, testing it. Yes, that's perfect. Clara cleaned up efficiently, checking both mother and baby, pronouncing them healthy. When Thomas was finally allowed in to meet his sister, he approached cautiously, staring at the tiny bundle in wonder. "She's so small," he said. "You were this small once," Jonah told him. Thomas touched Hope's hand gently. "Hi, baby sister. I'm your big brother. I'll teach you stuff." Hope yawned, utterly unimpressed, and Thomas laughed. That night, exhausted but unable to sleep, Evelyn held her daughter and thought about the journey that had brought her here. From invisible daughter in Philadelphia to wife and mother in Montana. From convinced she was unworthy of love to surrounded by it. "What are you thinking?" Jonah asked softly. He lay beside her, one arm around her shoulders, the other hand resting gently on Hope's back. "About how different my life is from what I expected. How much better it is." "No regrets?" "Not one." She looked at him in the lamplight, at the man who had seen her worth when she couldn't see it herself. "You gave me everything, Jonah. A home, a family, a purpose. You made me believe I was enough." "You were always enough, Evelyn. You just needed someone to recognize it." He kissed her temple. "And you gave me everything too. Partnership, honesty, love, a second chance at family. You made me whole again." Hope stirred between them, making small sounds. Evelyn adjusted her carefully, marveling at how natural it felt already, this weight in her arms. "We're going to be all right," she said. "All of us." "Yes," Jonah agreed. "We are." Through the window, the Montana stars glittered in an endless sky. Somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed softly. The ranch settled into its nighttime rhythms, solid and enduring. And in that small bedroom, surrounded by love, hard-won and honestly earned, Evelyn Reed felt something she'd never felt before in her entire life. She felt like she belonged. The weeks after Hope's birth blurred together in a haze of sleepless nights and overwhelming love. Evelyn had thought she understood exhaustion from ranch work, but nothing compared to the bone-deep weariness of caring for a newborn. Hope nursed constantly, slept in unpredictable bursts, and cried for reasons Evelyn couldn't always decipher. But Jonah was there. Every night when Hope woke crying, he was up before Evelyn could fully rouse herself, changing the baby's cloths, walking her around the dark house, bringing her to Evelyn to nurse. During the day, he took Hope whenever he could, wearing the infant against his chest in a sling Clara had made, doing chores one-handed while the baby slept. "You need to rest," he'd insist when Evelyn protested. "I can manage." "You're already managing everything else, the ranch, the animals, and you're managing a human who needs you every 2 hours. We're both doing what needs doing." Thomas adapted to his sister with surprising grace, though he complained loudly when she cried during his bedtime stories. "She's so noisy," he'd groan, covering his ears. "You were noisy too," Jonah reminded him with amusement. "I was a good baby." "You absolutely were not." By August, Hope had grown into herself, her features settling, her personality emerging. She was watchful and serious, studying faces with intense brown eyes. When she smiled, rare but devastating, it transformed her entire face. "She looks like you," Evelyn told Jonah one evening, watching him hold their daughter. "She has your determination. See how she furrows her brow when she's concentrating?" It was true. Even as an infant, Hope approached nursing, sleeping, and observing the world with focused intensity. The ranch prospered that summer. The hay crop was abundant, the cattle healthy and multiplying. Jonah's careful management and their shared sacrifices were paying off. They weren't wealthy by any measure, but they were stable, secure. September brought another letter, this one unexpected. Evelyn recognized Margaret's handwriting and felt her chest tighten. Her sister had never written before. She opened it carefully, braced for judgment or demands. Instead, she found something different. Margaret wrote that their mother had fallen ill, nothing immediately life-threatening, but serious enough to force reflection. In her illness, she'd expressed regret about how she'd treated Evelyn, about the harshness of her last letter. Margaret herself had been thinking about their childhood, about how unfairly she'd treated her older sister, basking in their parents' favor while Evelyn was overlooked. "I'm sorry," Margaret wrote. "I'm sorry for being cruel, for taking your invisibility for granted, for not standing up for you when I should have. Mother wants to write to you herself when she's stronger, but I wanted to say this first. You were braver than any of us, Evelyn. You chose your own life when the rest of us were too afraid to step outside the lines drawn for us. I hope you found happiness in Montana. I hope you found the belonging you never had here." Evelyn read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Not from pain this time, but from release. She hadn't realized how much she'd needed this. Acknowledgement that the fault had never been hers, that her family's failure to see her worth was their failing, not hers. "Good news or bad?" Jonah asked, seeing her tears. "Good, I think. My sister apologized. For everything." She handed him the letter. He read it carefully, his expression softening. "Are you going to write back?" "Yes. Not to reconcile exactly, but to—" She searched for words, "to close that chapter properly, without bitterness." That night, while Hope slept and Thomas was in bed, Evelyn composed her response. She wrote honestly about her life, the struggles and joys, the partnership she'd built with Jonah, the children who filled her days with purpose and love. She thanked Margaret for the apology and wished her well. She even extended tentative forgiveness to their mother, though she made clear she would not be returning to Philadelphia. "This is my home now," she wrote. "These are my people. I am no longer the invisible daughter trying to earn love through compliance. I am a wife, a mother, a rancher's partner. I am seen, valued, and loved for exactly who I am. I hope someday you can visit and see the life I've built, but if not, know that I'm happy, truly, completely happy." She sealed the letter and felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The past no longer had power over her. She'd written her own story, and it was better than anything her family could have planned for her. October brought the first frost and the realization that another winter was coming. But this time, Evelyn faced it without fear. They were prepared, supplies laid in, hay abundant. They'd weathered one Montana winter together and survived. They could do it again. Thomas started proper schooling that fall, Clara teaching him along with her own grandchildren in the Bennett home 3 days a week. He'd grown so much in the year since Evelyn had arrived. Taller, more confident, fully settled into calling her mama without hesitation. "I told the other kids my mama came on a train," he announced one day. "Billy Henderson said that's weird. I said it's not weird. It's brave." Evelyn's throat tightened. "What did Billy say to that?" "He said his mama came on a train too, from Ohio. So we're both brave kids with brave mamas." Jonah laughed quietly. "That's one way to look at it." November brought unexpected visitors. A wagon rolled up to the ranch one afternoon, and Evelyn was shocked to see the Morrisons, the family whose barn had burned, whose crisis had tested their community. "We wanted to thank you properly," Mrs. Morrison said, climbing down with a basket, "for the hay you gave us. We made it through last winter because of your generosity." "Anyone would have done the same," Jonah said, clearly uncomfortable with the gratitude. "No, they wouldn't have. Many offered smaller amounts. You gave 20 tons when you could barely afford it." Mr. Morrison shook Jonah's hand firmly. "We've had a good year. Sold some cattle at excellent prices. We wanted to repay you." "That's not necessary. It is to us." Mrs. Morrison pressed the basket into Evelyn's hands. "Please, let us do this." The basket contained preserved foods, a beautiful quilt, and an envelope. Inside the envelope, money, enough to more than repay the value of the hay. "This is too much," Evelyn protested. "It's exactly right," Mrs. Morrison said firmly. "You helped us when we had nothing. Let us help you now that we have something to give." After they left, Jonah and Evelyn sat at the kitchen table staring at the money. "We could expand the herd," Jonah said slowly. "Buy breeding stock, improve our long-term prospects. Or we could save it for emergencies. We've learned how quickly disaster can strike." They decided to do both. Invest half in the ranch's future, save half for security. It was the kind of decision they made together now, naturally, without thought. Partnership had become second nature. Winter arrived in earnest in December, but this year they celebrated Christmas properly. Jonah cut a small pine tree and brought it inside. Thomas made decorations from paper and string. Evelyn baked cookies from precious sugar stores. They sang songs around the fire, while Hope gurgled in her cradle, fascinated by the flickering light. "Best Christmas I've had in years," Jonah said quietly that night, holding Evelyn close in their bed. "Maybe ever." Even better than when you were a child? My childhood Christmases were lonely after my mother died. My father tried, but he was always so focused on survival. Jonah kissed her temple. This is different. This is joy. Spring came early that year, the snow melting rapidly in March, revealing a valley eager to bloom. Hope was crawling by then, getting into everything, Thomas following her around to make sure she didn't hurt herself. They'd become inseparable, the boy and his baby sister. She's going to be spoiled, Evelyn warned. Good, Thomas said firmly. She should be spoiled. She's the best baby. One April morning, Evelyn was in the garden planting early vegetables when a fancy carriage appeared on the road, an unusual sight in ranch country. It drew closer, and she realized with shock that it was heading toward their house. Jonah, she called, suddenly self-conscious about her dirt-stained dress and bare feet. He emerged from the barn, wiping his hands, equally confused. They watched together as the carriage stopped and a well-dressed couple emerged. Evelyn's heart stopped. Margaret. Her sister was here, in Montana, stepping carefully around mud puddles in expensive shoes. With her was a man Evelyn didn't recognize, Margaret's husband, presumably. Evelyn? Margaret looked uncertain, nervous. I hope this isn't an intrusion. Your letter mentioned you had a home here, and I wanted to see it. To see you. For a moment, Evelyn couldn't speak. Her perfect sister, who had never left Philadelphia except for Newport summers, had traveled across a continent to visit her. You came, she finally managed. I did. We did. Margaret gestured to her husband. This is Robert. Robert, my sister Evelyn. Jonah stepped forward, offering his hand to Robert. Jonah Reed, welcome to our ranch. The men shook hands while the sisters stared at each other across years of distance and hurt. Would you like to come inside? Evelyn asked, finding her manners. It's not fancy. I don't care about fancy, Margaret interrupted. I want to see your life. The real version, not the polished one. They went inside, Evelyn acutely aware of the simple furnishings, the worn floors, the baby toys scattered around. This house couldn't be more different from Margaret's Philadelphia mansion, but Margaret didn't seem to notice the plainness. She was focused on the details that made it a home, the rocking chair Jonah had built, Thomas's drawings on the wall, Hope's cradle by the window. Her eyes filled with tears. It's beautiful, she whispered. It's really beautiful. It's just a ranch house, Evelyn said, confused. No, it's a home built on love. I can feel it. Margaret turned to her, tears spilling over. Evelyn, I'm so sorry. For everything. For being cruel, for being blind to how badly we treated you, for not appreciating you until it was too late. You wrote that in your letter. Writing isn't enough. I needed to say it to your face, to see that you're happy, and know that I'm genuinely glad for you. Margaret took her hands. You were always stronger than me, braver. I just couldn't see it because I was too busy being the favorite to question whether being the favorite meant anything at all. Evelyn's vision blurred. I forgave you already, when I read your letter. I know, but I needed to forgive myself, and I couldn't do that without seeing you, without making sure you were truly all right. They embraced, awkwardly at first, then tighter. Years of hurt didn't disappear instantly, but they began to heal. The visit lasted 3 days. Margaret and Robert stayed at the hotel in town but spent their days at the ranch. Margaret helped with chores, getting her expensive dresses dirty without complaint. She fed chickens, collected eggs, and laughed when one particularly aggressive hen pecked her hand. This is harder than I imagined, she admitted, rubbing her sore back after an afternoon of work. Every single day, Evelyn agreed, but it's worth it. I can see that. Margaret watched Jonah teaching Thomas to mend a fence while Hope napped in a basket nearby. You found something real here, something I'm not sure exists in Philadelphia anymore. Robert and Jonah got along surprisingly well, the banker's son genuinely interested in ranch operations. He asked intelligent questions, took notes, and admitted he found the work fascinating. I spend my days moving numbers around ledgers, he said over dinner one night. You build actual things, create actual value. There's something honest about that. On their last evening, Margaret pulled Evelyn aside while the men were outside, and Thomas was putting Hope to bed under Clara's supervision. Mother really does want to write to you, Margaret said. She's still recovering, but she's different now, softer. The illness changed her perspective. I'll read anything she sends, Evelyn promised. I'm not holding grudges anymore. I don't have the energy for it, and I don't need to. Because you have this. Margaret gestured around the simple but warm house. You have everything that matters. I do. Evelyn realized it was completely true. I really do. I'm envious, Margaret admitted quietly. Not of the hardship or the isolation, but of the certainty. You know exactly who you are and where you belong. I'm still trying to figure that out. You will. Just be honest about what you actually want, not what you're supposed to want. Margaret smiled. Advice from my little sister. Who would have thought? Big sister, Evelyn corrected. I'm older than you. You know what I mean. You always seem smaller, quieter. But you're not. You never were. After they left, the ranch felt quiet. Evelyn stood on the porch, watching their carriage disappear down the road, and felt the final piece of her past settle into place. She'd needed that closure, that acknowledgement. Now she had it. You all right? Jonah asked, joining her. More than all right. That visit, it was good. Really good. Your sister seems different than I expected. She's grown. We both have. Summer arrived with its usual intensity, bringing long days of hard work and short nights of exhausted sleep. Hope took her first steps in July, just after her first birthday. Thomas was so proud he ran all the way to the Bennett place to tell Clara. The ranch continued to prosper. The cattle multiplied, the hay crop was abundant again, and Jonah's careful management bore fruit. They weren't rich, but they were comfortable. Secure. One August evening, Evelyn was washing dishes while Jonah dried, their familiar rhythm, when he said quietly, I've been thinking about something. What's that? We should expand, build a proper addition to the house, another bedroom, maybe a real dining room, and I want to bring on more help, grow the operation. Evelyn turned to look at him. That's ambitious. We can do it. We've proven we can handle challenges, and he hesitated. I want to build something that lasts, something we can pass down to Thomas and Hope, a legacy. A legacy, Evelyn repeated, testing the word. She thought about the terrified woman who'd stepped off a train with one suitcase, convinced she had nothing to offer. Now that woman was contemplating building a legacy. What do you think? Jonah asked. I think it's a beautiful dream. Let's make it real. They did. Over the next several years, they expanded gradually and carefully. They built the addition to the house, they increased their herd, they hired seasonal help during busy periods. The ranch grew from a modest operation to something substantial. Thomas grew tall and strong, eventually taking on more responsibilities. Hope developed into a fierce, intelligent girl who could outride most boys her age and wasn't afraid of hard work. 2 more children followed, another boy and another girl, each welcomed with joy and raised with the same values: honesty, partnership, and courage. The community grew to respect Evelyn not as Jonah Reed's mail-order bride, but as Mrs. Reed, a woman who'd fought fires, weathered storms, built a successful ranch, and raised fine children. She served on the church committee, helped organize the school, and never hesitated to speak her mind when something needed saying. Elizabeth Hartwell eventually moved back east, unable to maintain her social dominance in a community that valued substance over pretense. At her farewell gathering, she approached Evelyn with something almost like respect. You proved me wrong, she admitted stiffly. I thought you'd fail within a year. Instead, you've thrived. I found where I belonged, Evelyn said simply. That makes all the difference. The years passed in a blur of seasons. Harsh winters and abundant summers, struggles and triumphs, losses and gains. Evelyn's hands grew more weathered, her face more lined. The plainness she'd once agonized over had settled into something else, the weathered beauty of a life well lived, of hardship overcome, of love earned and given freely. She was 45 years old, standing in her garden on a perfect June morning, when she realized with startling clarity that she was happy. Not in moments, not conditionally, but fundamentally and completely happy. Her children were healthy and thriving. Her marriage was stronger than ever. Her ranch was prosperous. She had friends who valued her, a community that respected her, and a purpose that fulfilled her. She was no longer invisible. She had never been plain, not in the ways that mattered. "Mama," Hope called from the house. She was 17 now, preparing to leave for teacher's college in the fall. "Papa says to tell you the photographer's here." They'd commissioned a family photograph, something Jonah had insisted on. "I want to remember this," he'd said. "All of us together, exactly as we are now." Evelyn cleaned her hands and headed toward the house, where her family was gathering. Thomas, 22, and courting Sarah Tucker's daughter. Hope, brilliant and determined. The younger children, 12 and 9, already arguing about who got to stand where. And Jonah, 59 now, his dark hair threaded with silver but his eyes still warm when they found hers. "You're beautiful," he said quietly as she approached, the same words he'd spoken that first day on the train platform. But this time, Evelyn understood completely. She finally saw what he saw. Not conventional beauty, but the beauty of strength, honesty, courage. The beauty of a woman who'd chosen her own path and walked it without apology. "So are you," she replied, and meant it. The photographer arranged them carefully. Jonah and Evelyn in the center, children gathered around, the ranch house and Montana sky stretching behind them. A portrait of a family built on truth, partnership, and the courage to choose love over convenience. "Everyone ready?" the photographer called. "On 3. 1, 2. The flash captured them forever. Jonah's hand on Evelyn's waist, her hand covering his, children leaning in close, all of them smiling with the unselfconscious joy of people who knew exactly where they belonged. That evening, after the children were in bed and the house was quiet, Jonah and Evelyn sat on the porch, watching the sun set over the mountains. It was their favorite time, this quiet hour between day and night, when they could simply be together without the demands of ranch life pressing in. "Do you ever think about that first day?" Evelyn asked. "When I stepped off the train?" "All the time." Jonah took her hand, his thumb tracing the calluses she'd earned through years of work. "I was so nervous, convinced you'd take one look at me and get right back on that train. I was convinced the same thing about you. We were both fools. We were both afraid." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "But we were brave anyway." "You were brave," he corrected. "You crossed a continent to marry a stranger. I just had the sense to recognize something precious when I saw it." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky turn from gold to pink to purple. Somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed. Closer, the chickens settled in for the night. The familiar sounds of home. "Jonah?" Evelyn said softly. "Thank you." He turned to look at her, confused. "For what?" "For seeing me. For believing I was beautiful when I couldn't believe it myself. For building this life with me." Her voice caught. "For giving me a place to belong." He cupped her face gently, the same calloused hands that had helped her off the wagon that first day, that had built their home, that had held each of their children moments after birth. "Evelyn, you gave me just as much. More, maybe. You gave me partnership, honesty, and love I didn't think I'd find again. You gave me hope, our daughter and the thing itself. You made our house a home. We made it together." "Yes," he agreed, "together." He kissed her then, soft and sweet. The kiss of two people who'd chosen each other every single day for years and would continue choosing each other for all the days to come. When they finally pulled apart, the stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. The same stars that had watched over that terrified woman on a train platform all those years ago. The same stars that had seen her transform from invisible daughter to beloved wife, from uncertain newcomer to pillar of her community, from plain to beautiful in all the ways that truly mattered. "I love you," Evelyn whispered. "I love you too," Jonah replied. "Always have, always will." They stayed on the porch until the sky was full dark and the temperature dropped enough to drive them inside. Walking hand in hand into the warm house, surrounded by evidence of the life they'd built, children's toys, worn furniture, photographs on the wall, Evelyn felt a profound sense of peace. She had not become beautiful. She had finally learned she always was. And in that truth, in the daily choice to see each other clearly and love what they saw, Jonah and Evelyn Reed had built something that would outlast them both. A legacy not of wealth or status, but of honest love, genuine partnership, and the courage to choose each other when the world said they shouldn't matter. Their children would tell the story to their grandchildren, who would tell it to their children in turn. The story of a plain woman from Philadelphia who answered an advertisement and found not just a husband, but herself. The story of a widowed rancher who looked past beauty and found something infinitely more valuable. The story of two people who built a life from truth and made it last. The Montana sky stretched endless above them, full of stars and possibilities. Inside the house, children dreamed of futures they'd build with the same courage their parents had shown. And Jonah and Evelyn Reed, no longer young, but still choosing each other every single day, prepared for bed in the partnership that had defined their marriage from the very beginning. "You're beautiful," Jonah murmured one last time as they settled in for the night. And finally, completely, Evelyn believed him. Not because she'd changed, but because she'd learned what beauty really meant. It wasn't found in mirrors or measured by other people's standards. Beauty was courage, honesty, partnership, choosing love every single day, even when, especially when, it was hard. Beauty was the life they'd built together in the Montana wilderness, ordinary and extraordinary all at once, and it was theirs forever.